happy birthday, CRA. And all the CRA officers as a result of it. Thank you.
My hope is that through these types of efforts, through this changed face of advocacy, we redesign our welfare state to expand opportunity and not just guard fortunes, so that we can build a society where each person is enabled to attain their full potential, to be capable of being all that they can be. Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to turn the floor over to DCRAC's Executive Director, Rashmi Rangan. Rashmi, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Quite welcome.
Very occasionally, I am prepared. Welcome to our annual Celebrate CRA. 364 days of the year, we live, work, breathe the Community Reinvestment Act, believe me. We pause today to celebrate it. As many of you know, the Community Reinvestment Act was enacted to repair the harms of redlining and financial exploitation, particularly for communities of color. Its importance has never been greater than today. And today, it celebrates its 46th birthday. Happy birthday, CRA. And all the CRA officers as a result of it. Thank you. The pandemic rocked our world, we know that. And now 3 years later, the financial vulnerability has returned to its pre-pandemic level. Again, disproportionately hurting communities of color. According to the US Trends Report for 2023, conducted by the Financial Health Network, annual trends since 2018, the share of financially vulnerable Americans grew to 17%, from 15% in 2022, 14% in 2021, 15% in 2020, and in the prior years, 17%. So the pandemic was actually good for our communities for just a tad bit. Things are back to pre-pandemic levels. We shouldn't be celebrating yet. Financially vulnerable Americans are defined as those that are struggling to a certain extent with almost all financial planning aspects: spending, saving, borrowing, and planning. But hope is not lost. In fact, standing here today among all of you reminds me of why we do what we do. And it reminds me of a story my daughter Artika wrote in the UD Messenger, of which she is an editor. The story goes like this. In a pot of boiling water is a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. The strong carrot wilts in the heat. The delicate egg hardens in the heat, but the bean remains intact, releasing something powerful from within to change the water around it. We, every one of us here today, living, working, breathing community reinvestment, embody the proverbial coffee beans. Fellow coffee beaners, we believe that financial equity is possible and that we can achieve it here in Delaware. I thank our sponsors for investing in this belief. JP Morgan Chase, Discover Bank, M&T, PNC, Artisans, board member Eric, the Rangans, and many of you who actually gave me the check. If you haven't, I am collecting. Our theme today, Changing Faces of Advocacy, seems so fitting. People often mistake advocacy for something harsh and aggressive. And while fighting for justice is inherent in advocacy, the most powerful and effective forms of advocacy require collaboration and a commitment to problem solving. Today's honorees are problem solvers for financial inequity. They are the coffee beans changing and improving the tumultuous environment around them. Thank you. We are proud to be your partners, and we are proud to do this energizing, transformative coffee bean work with you. Through the Money School, we build self-advocates who understand their financial rights and responsibilities. I see a few volunteers here. Darren, Sam couldn't make it, Peter couldn't make it. Did I miss anyone else who volunteers as a Money School instructor? Alicia, our former volunteer, come back. If you are interested in teaching, please connect with me and join our core of volunteer instructors. You won't believe how we change and we transform people's financial lives. Thank you, Darren. Stepping Stones Community Federal Credit Union. It's a solutions-oriented advocacy because we provide access to banking, and we know access to services equals financial well-being. I want to thank the leadership at the credit union. Matt Parks there. Dave came in and left early. Marquivas also left a little early. Will, Chris, Blanche, and Greg, I still see here. Thank you. Consumer financial advocacy is the traditional battles by giving voices for those who can't speak up for themselves. As I look around this room, I see very few faces from 1996 when we launched this Celebrate CRA event. Of course, my husband Ravi, my daughter Artika, Rob Goldberg, one of the first pro bono volunteer attorneys I ever met within days of landing this job. God knows what I was thinking. Bob, our former chair from back then. Susan Frank, I've known from the day I joined. Where is Susan? She left? She left too. Joel Schiller, who was to be here, but I've known him practically from his beneficial days. Who in this room did I know in 1996 and not recognize? Brenda, yes. You and I have known each other since your YWCA days. Who else did I? Anne Levine Coates in there that I'm sorry, ladies, the most powerful ladies in this room, and I didn't sorry. But now you're recognized. We are here because of DCRAC's talented team. Jacqueline, Maricela, Anthony, Christian, Blanche is at a Federal Home Loan Bank board meeting. Mayela. Thank you. and our visionary board, Al, Eric, Darren, not Joel Schiller, Lillian, our honoree today, Lisa, who is celebrating her 40th birthday, maybe 50th, maybe 60th, who knows? Who's counting? Luli, who's actually probably given birth. Vernon, I see Vernon here. Thank you. Let's celebrate. And I now invite Jacqueline to introduce our keynote. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Rashmi. So this year, we're celebrating Maricella's 10 years at DCRAC.
And Jacqueline's 11.
Maricela started with us as an intern while she was at Howard High School. And she and I spent a lot of time together in the early years. She was translating, helping in our tax clinic, and she's been at Stepping Stones from day one.
Well, I wasn't prepared for this, but I just want to say thank you. And out of those 10 years that I've been with DCRAC and Stepping Stones, I've enjoyed every bit of it, every moment of it. Coming out of high school, I really didn't know what my purpose in life was. But just working with Stepping Stones, I found myself, and I found that I really love working with the community and helping the community. So I just want to say thank you to Jacqueline and Rashmi for being my mentors at the beginning and then just being there for me throughout the whole year. So thank you, everyone.
Yes. I love to talk about money. Money makes the world go round. I can take your money. Again, a reminder if you didn't hear me first time. But as I talk about money, one of the first things I realized about coming to America was we Americans don't know money. We love it, we love to spend it, but very few of us know how to use it for the tool that it is. Last couple of years, I've created a curriculum. It's a 9-month-long. Spend an hour and a half with me, second Monday, 6 to 7:30. Boring, 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 but it is fun. Trust me, if you don't think money management is fun, attend my classes. Some of them did, and 2 of my graduates are here today. May I invite Cora Swan and Jackie Stanbeck, please, to join me. And if you feel like, you're welcome to take the mic. If you don't, you're okay.
Well, I just want to say thank you to, I'm Cora. I just want to say thank you to Rashim. She has been really, really good in helping us with this, learning about money. So thank you to Rashim.
We don't have any voice left.
I have no voice.
But what a delight it has been to be in person. The last time we were together was 2019. I actually forgot how awesome it is to be around such awesomeness. Have fun. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. Please join me in welcoming Jo Christine Miles.
So I love it when somebody does their research. Jacqueline dug in the crates for some of that information. Brava, brava. So I do have some perspectives to share. I will warn you, I have a little preaching in me tonight. So not digging so much into my philanthropic basket, although I have a couple of things to say about that. But digging more into the theme of tonight, which is advocacy. And my first point, I'll be a bit long-winded about, is a type of advocacy I'd really like to see us do in this nation, and I think it starts at the local level. Before I dig into that, I should say it is an unadulterated pleasure to be here with you. Thank you to Rashmi and to the DCRAC staff for having me here, and thanks to all of you for lending me your ears as I dig into tonight's theme, the changing faces of advocacy. Rashmi specifically asked me to opine on how we could move the needle on lifting up our communities and to quell a trend that she mentioned during her opening remarks that's highlighted in the Financial Health Network's 2023 U.S. Trends Report about the increase in financial vulnerability among Americans. That increase in vulnerability is showing up across the 4 pillars of financial health, so that would be across spending, saving, borrowing, and planning. And something that's particularly disturbing is that those increases in the share of financially vulnerable Americans is concentrated among young people. It's concentrated among those between the ages of 18 and 35, so the next generation for me. I'll only talk about my age here. That's really troubling, right? Because we know that when it comes to financial health, the earlier you start, the better you end up, right? These trends are concerning to me personally. I would like to live in a neighborhood, a state, a country, a world where my fellow humans are thriving, regardless of their gender, race, ethnicity, or their zip code. And it is heartbreaking and dangerous when that's not the case. Working in philanthropy, I'm also quite concerned professionally. Principal Foundation's mission is to advance financial health and security for all. And this latest report clearly demonstrates that the needle is moving in the wrong direction, particularly, again, for that next generation. I'm also concerned because philanthropy cannot spend enough to override bad policy, period, ever. Neither, by the way, can alms, prayers, or volunteerism, right? The remedy for bad policy is good policy. And the way we get there is through advocacy. We need advocacy to promote good policy, and it is only good policy that can remedy the evils of bad policy. Now, in the past, advocates pursued national policy, right? So yes, grassroots organizing was crucial to that work, but the end goal was some new federal policy, case law at the federal level, et cetera. The suffragists sought an amendment. They had to get a constitutional amendment to get the right to vote. So they started locally, and they were really moving to change federal law. Civil rights activists sought the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and a plethora of other federal cases, regulations, et cetera, to strike at the heart of Jim Crow. Of course, many more federal laws followed to bolster civil rights and promote a more just and inclusive American society. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 1968, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Community Reinvestment Act, right? Passed in 1977, which sought to address de facto lending discrimination by banks. Now, all of those federal policies at the national level had local effect, right? But to get the local effect to happen, you needed people at the grassroots level to move that forward. And it was done better in some places than in others. Here in 2023, our political landscape has changed drastically. I would argue that over the last 15 years, we've witnessed a significant erosion in our ability to govern at the national level. We all recently experienced the removal of the Speaker of the House for the first time in U.S. history. And just in case you forgot your schoolhouse rocks, right? The Speaker of the House is needed to move any legislation forward. So not having one is a problem, big problem. The pro temp can't do it. And some big legislation we have coming down the pike is keeping the government running. So without a speaker, we have some serious implications for the legislative process. But with this shift away that we've seen from bipartisan cooperation at the federal level, advocacy efforts on the local level people have doubled down on those, tripled down on those, and we've seen some great successes, right? In the anti-poverty space, we've seen a movement at the local level to promote things like guaranteed income, right? In New York City, an expansion of the care infrastructure, an increase in the minimum wage, all things that should happen at the federal level, but we got immediate reaction and immediate effect at the local level. So I'm merely asserting that oftentimes, while the goal of advocacy is federal policy, in the face of very real political challenges we have today, we need to take a step back. Yes, continue to work on a parallel path for that federal policy, but double down on what can be done on the local level. And with respect to poverty, I would argue that our focus for effective and immediate impactful change will require that we work locally. So, what should the focus of that local advocacy be? For me, it needs to start with narrative change. For anyone who's worked in the anti-poverty space, anyone who has lived experience with poverty, you're aware of the stereotypes that we have about people who are poor. Our advocacy must challenge those ideas and those assumptions about poverty. We've been trained since the earliest days of capitalism to see the poor as idle and as unmotivated. The world's first capitalists faced the problem that the private sector still confronts, and that is, how do we get the masses to come into our mills, our offices, our slaughterhouses to work for as little pay as the law and the market will allow? Big money, however, requires big government. Oftentimes, and what we see now, is that big government works to protect the idea of property, right? Property rights. But what the earliest capitalists found is that in addition to protecting property rights, government can also give away bread, and that is a problem, right? Because it's viewed as disincentivizing that reliance on work. So, early capitalists saw aid to the poor as bad policy and as an existential threat, something that would sever the reliance of workers on those jobs. So they decried the corrosive effects of government aid. As early as 1704, Daniel Defoe published a pamphlet arguing that the poor would not work for wages if they were given charity. This argument has been repeated over and over again by leading thinkers. Joseph Townsend in his 1786 treatise, A Dissertation on the Poor Laws, and Thomas Malthus in his famous 1798 treatise, An Essay on the Principle of Population. And if we fast forward, those same arguments persist. So we have President Franklin Roosevelt, the originator of the American safety net in 1935, calling welfare a drug, that subtle destroyer of the human spirit. We have Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater in 1961 saying that he saw professional chiselers walking up and down the streets who don't work and have no intention of working. We have Ronald Reagan campaigning for the presidential nomination in the late 70s, telling audiences that public housing complexes in New York City, where you can have 11-foot high ceilings and a 20-foot long balcony. I haven't seen those projects in New York, and I'm from New York. In 1980, you had the American Psychiatric Association give an official diagnostic category called dependent personality disorder, also known as the welfare recipient. When President Bill Clinton in 1996 announced his plan to end welfare as we know it, because the program created a cycle of dependency that has existed for millions and millions of our fellow citizens, exiling them from the world of work. Or President Donald Trump's Council of Economic Advisors report that endorsed work requirements for the nation's largest welfare programs, claiming that America's welfare policies have brought about a decline in self-sufficiency. And most recently, in response to COVID-era stimulus payments, you had congresspersons tweeting about closed fast food restaurants. Quote, "This is what happens when you extend unemployment benefits for too long." Or Kevin McCarthy, who was then the House Minority Leader and now the former Speaker, wrote that Democrats have demonized work so Americans would become dependent on big government. We as a society have consumed and readily promulgated a false and dangerous narrative that our medicine for poverty, which is aid to the poor, is poison. Research proves otherwise. For instance, research does not support the hypothesis that robust COVID-era stimulus payments kept people out of the workforce. How do we know this? Because in June and July of 2021, 25 states, that's half of our union, right, stopped some or all of those emergency benefits that were rolled out during the pandemic, including the expanded unemployment insurance. This created an opportunity for social scientists to research what happened in the 25 states that stopped the stimulus and those that continued the stimulus. And what they found is that 5 of the states with the fastest job growth, Alaska, Hawaii, North Carolina, Rhode Island, and Vermont, had retained those benefits, and they had the fastest growth. But the states that had cut unemployment benefits and other stimulus payments did not experience job growth. So clearly there was something else happening, not receipt of those payments, that kept people out of the workforce. Research fails to support the dominant narrative that goes back to the great welfare debates of the 1980s and 1990s that specifically demonized single mothers of color in particular. Researchers found that most of those mothers stopped receiving welfare within 2 years, and if they returned to welfare, it was in response to a major life event, an illness, a divorce, the loss of a job, etc. And even then, they would come off of the welfare rolls. So those who stayed on the rolls for long stretches were exceptions to the rule. They were not the rule. They were not the narrative that we were being told. In fact, a review of the research by Science magazine concluded that the welfare system does not foster reliance on welfare so much as it acts as an insurance against temporary misfortune. So, my number one thing at the local level is our advocacy has to promote a bit of truth and reconciliation. Specifically, I believe it needs to spread 2 facts. The first fact is that social safety nets work. They work. If people are hungry, you don't give them deodorant, you give them food. If someone is unhoused, the fastest way to fix that is to do what? Put them in a house, right? When your baby's crying and they're hungry, you don't give them a toy, you give them a bottle. And our recent COVID history powerfully demonstrates this fact. Because of the generous unemployment benefits, the stimulus checks, the rental assistance, the expanded child tax credit, and other forms of relief, poverty did not increase during the worst economic downturn in nearly a century. The worst economic downturn. And in some ways, it may have been worse than the last one we had, right? Poverty fell, and by a tremendous amount. The US economy during COVID lost millions of jobs. Millions, not thousands, across the country, coast to coast, and on our little islands and stuff, right? There were roughly 16 million fewer Americans in poverty in 2021, however, than in 2018. What did that? It was the safety net. Poverty fell for all racial and ethnic groups. It fell for people who lived in cities, people who lived in rural areas. It fell for the young and it fell for the old. And most importantly, it fell for children. Swift government action during COVID cut childhood poverty in half. There is no other period in American history where you've had that type of reduction in poverty, particularly among children, that quickly. The second fact that our advocacy needs to lean into, and this may be shocking, and this in some ways is against my own best interests. Every American, let me be clear, I'm gonna say this in English. Every American benefits from big government and government programs. There's not a single one of us in here who does not. And the affluent are the biggest beneficiaries. We could spend a lot of time on this point, and I'm about to, but I would recommend Matthew Desmond's book, Poverty by America, for a full explication. But tonight what I'll offer you is this. The average rich and middle-class family draws on the same number of government benefits as the average poor family. How many of you knew that coming in here tonight? Thank you, Rashmi. But imagine how our conversation about poverty and the safety net changes when we put that out there. And what I'm talking isn't rocket science here. We saw a truth campaign work quite effectively against the tobacco industry, right? What they did was tell the truth. They didn't do any new research. They didn't cook up any new ideas. All they did was tell the truth, and that's the truth. Every single American, with the affluent being the biggest beneficiaries. The Government Citizen Disconnect, a book from 2018 by the political scientist Suzanne Mettler, reports that 96% of American adults have relied on a major government program at some point in their lives. That means everyone in here except for maybe 2 people in the back, right? Rich, middle class, and poor families depend on different kinds of programs, but the average rich and middle class family draws on the same number of government benefits as the average poor family. I'll give you some examples. Student loans. They look like they're issued by a bank, but the only reason banks hand out money to 18-year-olds, tens of thousands of dollars to 18-year-olds with no job, no credit, no collateral, is because the federal government guarantees the loans and pays half the interest. Where are my bankers at? Who's giving out loans to 18-year-olds? I got some 18-year-olds on the list if you all are up for that. But they do it because the federal government underwrites it. Financial advisors can help you sign up for 529 plans, but those plans' generous tax benefits cost the federal government an estimated $28.5 billion between 2017 and 2026. In 2020, the federal government spent more than $193 billion on homeowner subsidies, a figure that far exceeded the $53 billion allocated to housing assistance for low-income families. For most Americans under the age of 65, health insurance appears to come from their jobs. But supporting this arrangement is one of the single largest tax breaks issued by the federal government, one that exempts the cost of employer-sponsored health insurance from taxable incomes. It is estimated that in 2022 alone, this benefit cost the government $316 billion. So again, today, the biggest beneficiaries of federal aid are affluent families. In total, the United States spends $1.8 trillion in tax breaks to the affluent. And those are federal programs being paid for from the same pot that our safety net programs come from. To summarize, the first advocacy goal is to change the narrative about poverty and who benefits from government programs, and that work should happen on the national level, but I assert it must start in our own backyards. It starts with ourselves and all the lies we tell ourselves about why we have and other people don't. It starts with our neighbors. It starts with our local politicians. It starts with our kids. The second local-based advocacy work that I would suggest would be the construction of a shared definition and understanding of poverty and the drivers of poverty, because they do differ. Now, we all know poverty when we see it, right? But poverty in Des Moines, Iowa, where I now live, in New York City, where I came from, is driven by different factors. The outcome's the same, a lack of resources, but the drivers are different. So it takes a local effort to define what is poverty there and what the drivers are in that location to do something about it. Now, there are federal programs, yes, but you still need local implementation, and having a shared vision of what poverty alleviation in your location would be is quite helpful. Creating a shared understanding of poverty is the cornerstone for action. It enables stakeholders to understand their role in tackling poverty, and it's important to challenge the negative perceptions that we all carry at some point or another about people who live in poverty. With the shared definition, advocates would work to establish a basket of indicators that, again, are locally relevant and practical to set measurements and identify how locally you can pull the levers to impact those drivers differently. With this shared definition and consensus around the drivers, the community can work on the third bit of advocacy work, which is developing and implementing an anti-poverty strategy that focuses on prevention, reduction, and mitigation. Now, this won't be a surprise to anyone, but jobs is the number one thing in the prevention category, right? You need a legal source of income as a key component to preventing poverty. But what I'm adding to that is a rethinking or a reimagination of what jobs are at the local level and the power we have at the local level to influence how jobs impact the workers. So recent federal policies have focused on upskilling and preparing society for the future of work, and there have been millions in grant dollars distributed to the states. Some states have moved on it, some states haven't, that fund that upskilling function, and that's a good first start. All of it's implemented at the local level, though. So the nonprofits, the community organizers need to get about helping to define in a way that's locally relevant what that future of work should be. So again, what it looks like in Iowa is different than what it looks like in New York. The crux of the green economy will not be in New York City, but it could be in Iowa. It's already the second largest wind energy producing state in the union. That can be expanded. What it looks like in Delaware is different than what it looks like in Iowa. But you need that local advocacy to help implement the upskilling programs that are relevant for your local context. I would add to that we need internships focused on teaching the youth the skills that they're no longer being taught in school so they can be future ready. And we need reentry programs. Again, you have to have changes to the criminal justice system, but as far as how you reacclimate someone reentering society, that's local. You don't need any federal law or act to make that happen at the local level. And last, we need those CRA dollars funding small businesses and community development programs to create the opportunities that people can seize upon. Last, locally, we need, in the absence of federal legislation, advocacy that works to build up our local care infrastructure. So jobs that have leave policies. Again, you don't need a federal law for that to happen. The local small business can give a day or 2 days. Each company has its own capacity, right? Different capacity to give that. But it should be a bare minimum for any human to have the space without the stress of losing their job or wages to be able to take a day off to take care of themselves or to take care of someone else. And again, that's something that can be affected at the local level. In the reduction category of the advocacy work, I would advocate for programs that redirect the flow of individuals from poverty and towards financial health and security. And education is the first stop. And education is highly dependent on local politics. So on the local level, advocates can do things like volunteer and give to aftercare, after-school programs, to mentoring programs, and take further steps to support their local teachers. And on the philanthropic side, we have a huge role to play in that. Underwriting programs at schools, making sure that future-ready, relevant curriculum is available in schools. That's something that Principal Foundation has been investing in quite significantly in 11 markets, including here in Wilmington, preparing students for careers in data science with education that is appropriate for different age levels, right? That's a future-ready skill. Most skills aren't teaching it, but that is something that they would need to get that family-supporting job later in life. And then the final category of a local anti-poverty advocacy strategy would be mitigation. And on that level, I would increase the use of the programs we already have. So earlier in my comments, I talked about the tax breaks that middle-class and affluent families are using. They have many ways to avail themselves of those programs: accountants, financial advisors, lawyers, etc. The same is not true for those who are financially vulnerable. So rather than create new programs, applying our skills at the local level to get more people to use the programs that already exist. So let me give you some data around this, because it might sound like it's not needed, but it is. Now, we don't have any official estimates of the total amount of government aid that goes unclaimed by low-income Americans, but the number's got to be in the hundreds of billions. Here are a few stats. Roughly 7 million people who could receive the Earned Income Tax Credit don't claim it. Collectively, that adds up to about $17.3 billion annually. Combine that with the amount of money unclaimed each year by people who deny themselves food stamps, that's $13.4 billion. Government health insurance, that's $62.2 billion. Unemployment insurance between jobs, that's $9.9 billion. And supplemental security income, $38.9 billion. All of that is $142 billion in unused aid. So why aren't Americans using the programs that already exist? Because we made it too damn hard and confusing. That's what the research shows. So people simply don't know that the program exists, or the application process is so burdensome they can't get through it themselves. So on the local level, it could be as simple as using your advocacy to spread the word on the existence of the program, which is very effective. I'll give you a couple of examples in a moment. And number two, embedding access to those programs in the services people already use, like their schools, like the money school, etc. So there was an intervention program that tripled the rate of elderly people getting food stamps. And all they did was provide the information about how to get the food stamps. That's it. They didn't add to the money available. They didn't create a new program. They merely made the information available in an accessible way to the elderly people in that community. And they provided a telephone number where people could call if they needed help signing up. And they tripled the number of people accessing that aid program for an essential need, which is food. Another initiative significantly increased the number of workers who claimed the earned income tax credit. And all they did was send out mailers with a very simple font, not Times New Roman, it was Arial, and remove some of the words from the form. So rather than reading 500 words, they read about 30 words, and they applied for the aid. And that one simple thing, a font change, and the elimination of some words, helped bring millions more dollars to low-income working families. So to summarize, our anti-poverty strategy going forward should double down on local efforts focused on, one, fundamentally changing the narrative about poverty and the use of government programs. Just a truth campaign. Two, building consensus around what we mean by poverty, defining that in our local communities, and defining the local drivers of poverty. And then last, using that shared understanding to develop an anti-poverty strategy aimed at prevention, reduction, and mitigation without adding any new programs. My hope is that through these types of efforts, through this changed face of advocacy, we redesign our welfare state to expand opportunity and not just guard fortunes, so that we can build a society where each person is enabled to attain their full potential to be capable of being all that they can be. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you very much for being here this evening. I have the honor of presenting the first award tonight. It is the James H. Sills Jr. CRA Leadership Award, which recognizes a group who moves the needle for better through leadership in the field and innovative approaches to support a robust community. This year's award proudly goes to Sinair. So please come up and definitely bring the award.
I'll be very brief. I know it's been a long evening. I just want to say on behalf of Sinair, hello everyone, I'm Deanna Sargent. I'd like to say thank you to the Delaware Community Reinvestment Action Council for honoring us with the James Sills CRA Leadership Award. What an amazing legacy that he's created in Wilmington and beyond. And we just want to, again, just say thank you to DCRAC for your commitment to the community. And we appreciate being able to work alongside all of the organizations who are diligently working to revitalize Wilmington and direct funding to the community and residents where the need is greatest. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darren Moore. I'm an entrepreneur in Wilmington representing State Farm. and I have the distinguished honor of presenting an award, the Excellence in Community Service Award this evening. Named for DCRAC's longest-serving volunteer, the James S. Angus Excellence in Community Service Award recognizes an awardee who serves the community broadly and tirelessly. This year we honor Technically, a news platform founded in 2009. You can clap. A news platform founded in 2009 that connects and challenges a community of technologists and entrepreneurs who are invested in where they live. Through rigorous journalism and commitment to elevating innovation and amplifying the new voices in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, Delaware, Maryland, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. Technically continues to grow as a trusted news source in the region. Please join me as I welcome reporter at large and Delaware reporter from Technically, Holly Quinn.
Thank you so much. This is such a huge honor. I am the only staffer in Delaware, technically, so this is a really big deal for me, but for the whole organization. Our community-facing work is our most important. So for someone to notice is really a big deal, and it's really cool, and thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Matt Parks, and I work at Discover, but my most fun job and my favorite job is working as a chairman of Stepping Stones Federal Credit Union. And I have the honor tonight of presenting the Blanche Jackson Volunteer Award, who's named after my colleague and good friend, Blanche Jackson. Sort of talk a little about CRA tonight. Blanche is not here. I think Rashmi briefly mentioned that she's at a board meeting for the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh. For those of you who don't know, Blanche was, I think, based upon my research, is the first woman of color ever elected by banks to serve on the Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh, or quite frankly, any federal home loan bank system in this country. So she's out there making us proud. And another reason for this award. Blanche, took time to volunteer as an executive of other credit unions and actually quit her job in order to help us build a credit union. So this is certainly an honor for me to award this award tonight. And this year, we present this award to the Delaware Volunteer Legal Services Organization, or DVLS as we refer to it as. And we're honoring them for the work in meeting the justice gap by representing and coordinating quality pro bono services for those who are unable to hire an attorney. A vital part of civil, legal, and network throughout Delaware, DVLS has operated since 1981 and now manages 600 volunteers who receive training and mentoring through this organization. So help me congratulate DVLS for the Blanche Jackson Volunteer Award.
Nothing from us, we're just thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joel Amin Jr., and tonight I have the honor and privilege of presenting the Austin J. Board of Directors Award. This award was named for a longtime DCRAC member and honors individuals like him who have committed themselves to serving this community. I'm excited to announce that this year's award winner is our own board member, Ms. Lillian Harrison, who is so deserving of this award. She wears many hats in the community, from counselor to coach to pastor, and my favorite title of all that she is commonly referred to is CEO, and she runs her own CDC. It is known as Elevated CDC. It is always a privilege to connect with Lillian at our board meetings after a long, hard day of work. It is not always easy to spend another hour or two on Zoom, but Lillian's bright, shining face makes it easy, whether in person or on Zoom. And I'm so proud to present this award to you, and you're an inspiration to many of us on the board. Thank you so much.
I said I wasn't going to say anything, and I'm not going to say much because I'm a big baby. But I want to thank DCRAC for everything, for steering me in the right direction with regards to harnessing my power as an advocate for our communities, and for shaping my mind and what it means to really be community. I also want to give not only honor to God, but also thank my team who is here with me, who traveled here with me, who have now joined my madness in making communities better. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Celebrate CRA. It's great to be here. Please continue to enjoy your dinner. We're going to go ahead and get started with our program this evening. My name is Eric Smith, and I'm the Vice Chair of the board here at the Delaware Community Reinvestment Action Council, as we all know as DCRAC. I'm honored to have known DCRAC for 3 years now, and this organization has quickly become family. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful fall evening here at the Wilmington Riverfront, in a city that means so much to many of us, and it's a beautiful facility as well. Most importantly, we're here for our community, and we get to serve that community every single day. We touch so many lives here at DCRAC, whether it's through Stepping Stones, DCRAC Law, and the Money School. We want to enrich the lives of our neighbors. On behalf of the Board of Directors, thank you all for being here this evening.